Welcome to the Distinguished Physical Education Podcast, the show where we discuss how to create a rigorous, standards-based PE program that is safe and welcoming for all students. I'm your host, Gary Zaharatos, and I'm thrilled to give you a sneak peek into what we have in store for you. Are you passionate about growing as a teacher? Do you find yourself constantly reflecting on your teaching and seeking out new perspectives on physical education? Then you're in the right place. In each episode, we will dive deep into topics such as equity in PE, strategies for ensuring that students display on-task behavior, how to optimize your space and resources, utilizing standards-based content and language objectives to drive instruction and student learning, methods for effectively and efficiently assessing student progress towards objectives and tracking data, providing academically focused and descriptive feedback and next steps to students, what rigorous instruction looks like in PE, how to differentiate for the diverse needs of students, the importance of focusing lessons on standards-based social skills, and so much more. In each episode, you'll hear from some of the most forward-thinking minds in the world of physical education, as they offer insights, stories, and tips that you won't find anywhere else. Whether you're a seasoned veteran looking to shake things up, or just starting your journey into teaching physical education, my intention is to create a resource that is beneficial for everyone. So if you're ready to become a distinguished physical education teacher, make sure to subscribe and join our community. You can find the Distinguished Physical Education Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to join our Facebook group, where we have assembled quite the group of experts, always willing to share their insights and help out colleagues with their problems of practice. This podcast is being released along with my new book, Becoming a Distinguished Physical Education Teacher, which will be available on both Amazon and my website, www.distinguishedpe.com, this June. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing, and keep an eye out for the first batch of episodes coming real soon. Here's a brief clip from the first episode featuring the 2020 National High School Physical Education Teacher of the Year, Brian Hall. All right, Bryce. So today we're going to be talking about equity in physical education. And before we do, we need to define two terms. One is equity and the other is equality. Would you mind defining equality for us?
In physical education, again, just like in real life, equality focuses on giving everybody the same things. So in physical education, if I'm teaching a basketball unit and everybody has a basketball, yes, that's equality, but Gary, you can chime in once you hit the equity piece. It doesn't mean every student's going to be successful with the same type of basketball, the same size of basketball, balls with the similar bounce. It needs to be different. So equality, they all have the same thing, but there's a big difference between having the same thing and having what a student needs. So segue into equity, Gary.
When I think of equity, just in general terms, it means providing students with the different types of support that they need. Not that everybody has the exact same resources or is playing a game by the exact same rules. We know that people and students have a lot of different needs. So let's talk about some things that we can do as PE teachers to provide students with an equitable experience as opposed to one that is just equal for everybody. You want to run with that basketball example?
Yeah, I mean, in just a general basketball unit, again, we're going to get to rigor and differentiation later on during this conversation, but to have equitable teaching practices, a lot of times they do go hand in hand where differentiation plays a key role in that. So if I'm teaching a basketball unit, if I have a varsity basketball player in my class, along with a student who has never even dribbled a basketball before, well, equity is challenging each student where they're currently at, where equality is they both have a size 6 or a size 7 basketball. My job is not done there. My job is to make sure varsity basketball player and student who's never played before both can feel a sense of success. And to do that, I might give this student a larger basketball, maybe more inflated so it has an easier time bouncing, where I might give the varsity basketball player specific instructions, maybe dribbling with the non-dominant hand, maybe dribbling with his or her eye closed. That's equity, because if I had this student doing that, they would never be set up for success, never had um, being practicing basketball before even exposed to it.
Mm. Yeah, I love the connection between equity and differentiation. One of the terms that we use in Denver, you'll be familiar with this one, is called productive struggle. So again, it's about providing students with those opportunities in order to experience success while at the same time experiencing a little bit of struggle. You mentioned that we could provide students with different types of equipment. So that would be one, different types of basketballs. Other things that we can do to differentiate and provide a more equitable experience would be to change target sizes. Did you have any experience with that in your gym?
Yeah, I did. So, of course, in my gym, I had 6 basketball goals or hoops, but a lot of times for my lower level skilled students, I would just tape up boxes on the wall, and I would just have them focus on elevating their shot to that target, which, of course, the height was maybe 7 feet instead of your standardized 10 feet. And a lot of times some people think it's almost rocket science to have equitable teaching practices or to differentiate well. Sometimes it's the easiest things. And to your point, Gary, productive struggle, even though it might be easy for a varsity basketball player to just shoot a basket 8 feet into the air, for a student who's never been exposed to basketball, it was rigorous and they were really productively struggling with that task.
Yeah, that's a great example. And you're right, it's not rocket science. Oftentimes what it comes down to is the teacher having like a customer service mindset, right? By asking students what it is that they need in order to experience success, teachers can more easily modify activities. There's a couple of examples that I see. One at the elementary level, teachers, I've seen them hang hula hoops from the rim of the basket, like with a jump rope. Now kids have a hoop that they can try to shoot through that's 6 or 7 feet off of the ground. I think that's helpful if you don't have adjustable baskets. When it comes to games themselves, I've seen teachers make up rules to games where if you make a basket, it could be worth 3 points. If you just hit the rim, it might be worth 2 points. And if you're able to just shoot and use somewhat proper form, we don't want kids just chucking the ball from the 3-point line. But if you can even just hit the backboard with a shot, you get awarded a point for that. So I think there's just lots of different ways to differentiate a game like basketball. And of course, we could use these modifications across other activities as well. But these are some great ones that would allow students to struggle while still experiencing success.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it goes back to the whole term equitable, where the students can all be playing in the same game, but I like their modification of rules to where one of those modifications are going to make any and all students feel a sense of success and cause them to be eager of wanting to take a shot because there's something in it for them.
Yeah, and then as opposed, we could draw a little bit of a contrast here. It wouldn't be an equitable experience if every student was just playing regulation games of basketball. What might some students feel like if we had 5-on-5 games going on and the two students who you mentioned earlier, the student who might be a varsity basketball player and the student who has, the only time they've ever picked up a basketball has been in their PE classes over the last, 8 or so years for a couple weeks out of the year. What could that potentially look like if those two kids are playing in the same regulation type basketball game?
Yeah, I mean, first off, neither student's going to get anything out of it. Varsity player's going to have no challenge, where student who's never played before is going to almost be intimidated, and it's never going to want to make them even play or participate in basketball again. So one of the equitable things I like to do at times, and I don't always think this is appropriate. It almost depends on the unit, but sometimes I would do intentional ability grouping where I would maybe have all novice basketball players playing in the same game with one another and having a competitive game over here. It usually did one of two things. One, these players who again play on a regular basis were having fun, highly engaged, but had a challenge, while these students they were able to fail and productive struggle without having to worry about anything because they were all in the same boat.
I like what you said too about one of the end goals is just to get kids to enjoy physical activity. So if we allow students to do something like choose into a modified version of a game, it seems like they're much more likely to enjoy the game that they're playing, as opposed to a novice student at a particular skill being thrown in there with someone who's relatively experienced. We know that they're not going to feel really very inclusive in that activity.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to like the whole physically literacy term where you're going to see people playing pickup games at the park, but you're also going to see people just dribbling or shooting a basketball. Both are more than acceptable. It's just what is challenging to you and, to your point, what's more enjoyable to that specific person.
Yeah, it seems like that could even be one of the courts. So if we're thinking about an equitable experience for everyone and providing students with opportunities to be appropriately challenged, we could have one game where we're playing by, mostly regulation basketball rules, and students could self-select. They could choose into that game. We could have a game in the middle where we use, rules like I mentioned earlier, hitting the backboard gets a point, etc. We could even have a third court where students are practicing their skills. Maybe they're practicing their different types of passes, playing keep away. Maybe there's a dribbling obstacle course that students can work on the dribbling skill. So I think having that other option that's like heavily modified for students who just they don't feel like participating in any type of competitive game. I think that has a big impact on their participation levels as well.
Well, and you bring up a good point, Gary, because this is something you and I worked on when you were observing me a few times.